Nicollini slowly turned all the way around to absolutely sure no one was playing a trick on him. He took a step closer to the engine. He placed his hand on the cool steel and began to hum a tune. His mother used to sing to him when he was a little boy. He could remember only some of the words, so as he began to sing, he made up new words for a locomotive. It was a song about gentle hills, steady tailwinds, and feathers for freight. Soon Nicollini knew the ancient engine was asleep. The next night, Nicollini had to sing another engine to sleep, and then another and another, each with its own song. Nicollini knew that some of the trains were perfectly capable of falling asleep without a lullaby. In fact, there were nights when certain engines who felt involved, who felt unloved, would wake themselves up just to have Nicollini sing them back to sleep. Nicollini didn't mind. The words came to him easily. The tune was always the same, and it cost him nothing to bring them comfort. One hot night, Nicollini sat at the edge of the yard between a frustrated brake car and the wooden fence. He sang softly of smooth stops and cooperative cabooses. On the other side of the fence, a path had been worn through the weeds by a mother who on restless nights would walk from the city with her baby. She would walk and walk and walk, saying and praying that her baby would fall asleep in her strong, soft arms. As Nicollini sang to the brake car, he heard footsteps coming down the path. It was the mother with her baby, and this night Nicollini was close enough to the fence for them to be caught and help his soothing voice. The brake car snored gently on its siding. Nicollini sang the softest, sweetest song about cool sheets and leafy breezes. The baby fell asleep. The mother whispered 1,000 thanks and tiptoed back to the city. Night after night, she would return with her baby. Nicollini would sing to them. Then she would whisper her thanks over the fence. The mother told her friends about the rail yard lullabies, and soon there was a line of crying babies and exhausted mothers waiting at the fence for Nicollini. The trains didn't seem to mind, and then came the big night. Da-da-da! It was only wind, but it was wind and whistled chimneys and shook last year's kites out of the trees. Windows rattled and shutters clattered, and nobody could ever get to sleep. Finally, the wind quieted down, but the children in the city didn't. Babies wailed, older children tossed and turned, and parents sat on their rumpled beds staring up at the ceiling. Then, starting with most desperate mothers, someone in each building remembered Nicollini. Before too long, the rail yard was completely surrounded by crying babies, temper-troubled children, exasperated parents, and several disconcerted dogs with no other hope than Nicollini. The noise was deafening, and the confusion was overwhelming. Nicollini stood on a box in the middle of the yard and sang a beautiful lullaby about calm water, warm sand, deep shadows, and gently swaying hammocks. That's my favorite picture, Samantha, because that's just really funny. He's crying and he's frowning at the same time. Nobody heard a word. The crowd was too big and murmurous. Nicollini listened. He walked over to a steam engine and spoke to him softly. Nicollini smiled and nodded. He walked over to his box, climbed up, and raised his hands over his head. He pointed to the largest locomotive. It began to blow its whistle low and soft, as if it were miles away. He pointed to a smaller engine, and it began to blow. He pointed to another and another, and soon they were all blowing softly. Then Nicollini began to move his hands gracefully. The whistles began to play a tune, the same tune Nicollini remembered from his childhood. The same tune that the trains had heard and loved. The crowds grew quiet. The dogs curled up and closed their red-rimmed eyes with heavy sighs. The children became calm. Babies fell asleep. One by one, parents began to back away from the fence, stroking the damp hair of their sleeping children as they quietly carried them up the dirt path back to the city. One by one, Nicollini thanked each locomotive. One by one, they said, "You're welcome." Nicollini picked up his lantern and listened. All he could hear was crickets and yawns. Then all the trains whispered together in the dark and tender night. "Good night, Nicollini. Good night."